that brings you liberation theology right into your living rooms for your whole family to enjoy. Freedom, baby. What's up?
Speaking of freedom, a lot of Americans and British people think when we bomb, it's bringing freedom. Just like, remember when we bombed Iraq and they were supposed to meet us with flowers, throwing flowers at us, and they never quite did. Nevertheless, one thing that dropping missiles apparently does is booms the stock market, right? There were a lot of headlines from Friday the 13th when we bombed Syria, and everybody like at thestreet.com were like, defense shares up by $5 billion. Yeehaw, we're all making money. So we're going to go over a few of those headlines.
Oh, that's great news to understand that under the Democrats, it was the Muslims that were going to wipe us all out. Now no, wait, I got that reversed. It was somebody who was afraid of the Muslims, and now some people are afraid of Russians. They like an existential threat from afar. They don't like to look at the stuff that's happening inside America. Like I often tweet when people are saying, they're Russians. I say, what about Flint, Michigan? The U.S. government's trying to kill people with poison. Duh! Forget about the nerve agents in London. What about the nerve agents in Flint, Michigan killing Americans? Oh, we don't care about that because the stock market went up and we all got rich and we all hate black people, so you're an idiot. And I say, well, you reap what you sow.
It's also important to know April 13th, a lot of people are already paying their taxes. I paid a huge amount of taxes. I felt really, really sick to watch $225 million worth of Tomahawks fall on Syria. Half of them were apparently intercepted. So perhaps my tax check was actually intercepted and just evaporated in air. But I want to look at some of these charts over the defense shares, for example, and we're going to look at some reasons why these are up so much over the last few years. First, we're going to look at Raytheon, and they were $222 on Friday the 13th. They've been up fivefold, however, since August 2011. They're the fifth largest military contractor in the world with 53,000 employees, the world's largest producer of guided missiles, the Tomahawks. 57 Tomahawks apparently dropped on the country, actually, and there was over $100 million worth.
The connection between mass slaughter and genocide in the stock market's never been more beautifully connected if you're a plutocrat, right? So you think about World War II, the atrocities of World War II. If those things had been listed on the stock exchange and you could invest in the pogrom, as it were, America would have never invaded. They would have just sat back and counted their dividends.
So, my unique take on this, like a lot of people do talk about how much money are made in bombing and stuff like that. As I said, thestreet.com was saying, great, defense shares are up $5 billion. But I looked at this long-term chart. The thing that stood out to me about this Raytheon stock chart, and you'll see the same in the next two defense shares that I'm going to look at, Max. So we're talking about this particular chart here. Going back, this is the Cold War. Look at the stock chart there. Nothing too spectacular. This is from 9/11 and all the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. Look, not too much compared to the surge in the share price of Raytheon since 2011. I'm going to turn to another chart. This is the largest defense contractor in the world, and that's Lockheed Martin. You see a similar thing. There's from 2011. The share price is up fivefold as well. So what has happened uniquely since 2011? We're going to keep on looking at that, and the reveal is going to be coming soon. But Lockheed Martin is the number one stock defense contractor based on revenue. They have 100,000 employees. They do the F-22 Raptor, the F-35 also. Their share price actually didn't do so well, but $342.60 on Friday the 13th.
So the stock prices were like normal for years and years during even the Cold War, and then they suddenly shot up in 2011. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, and you have to wait a few minutes for what I think might be the reason for that. So we're going to keep on looking at the ongoing wars. Of course, in 2011, Gaddafi was overthrown. This is when Libya, and perhaps it's a new policy that happened. Perhaps it's a new something changed when we went after Libya, and then we knew Syria and Yemen were next. So perhaps that's it. And so we're going to look at some of that first. Syria strike puts Lockheed Martin's stealthy new missile to test. The joint U.S., French, and U.K. missile barrage on Syria this week included the battlefield debut of a stealthy new Lockheed Martin air-launched cruise missile produced as part of a $4.6 billion defense program. 19 missiles fired outside Syrian airspace by two B-1B bombers targeted the Barza Research and Development Center located in the greater Damascus area. Those Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missiles, or JSSMs, joined 57 Raytheon Tomahawks that Pentagon officials also said targeted the site.
That's right, but we're not safe here inside our borders against domestic terrorists, are we?
Let's turn to another share price, and this is Northrop Grumman, another one of the big defense contractors, and they're up even more. They're up sevenfold since 2011. They do surveillance, reconnaissance, protected communications, intelligence, battle management, strike operations, electronic warfare, and missile defense to Earth observation, space science, and space exploration. Again, I was looking at, they do surveillance. So is that the reason why they're up sevenfold since 2011? Has there something uniquely changed that was way worse than the Cold War, way worse than 2011, 2003 invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq? Is there something uniquely so much more profitable about now that they've increased by sevenfold? This is a
mystery. All of these defense contractors suddenly became 5-6 times stock prices in the market for some reason starting in 2011.
So I looked up some recent headlines from Northrop Grumman. What could they possibly have been doing? Well, here's a headline from January. Actually, this is from this past week, but it's about an event that happened in January that was very mysterious, among another darling of the stock market, Tesla. Remember in January, they launched a missile from some sort of rocket from Florida, and it exploded. The payload exploded. Well, it was very mysterious. It was a mysterious payload. Nobody knew what happened. Northrop Grumman, not SpaceX, reported to be at fault for loss of top-secret Zuma satellite. Northrop Grumman built and operated the components that failed during the controversial January launch of the U.S. spy satellite known as Zuma, according to a Wall Street Journal report on Sunday. 2 independent investigations made up of federal and industry officials pointed to Northrop's payload adapter as the cause of the satellite's loss. The payload adapter is a key part of deploying a satellite in orbit, connecting the satellite to the upper stage of a rocket. According to the article about this Zuma rocket that exploded, this payload that exploded on this rocket sent off by SpaceX, well, it was believed, we don't know how much, but it is believed to have cost around $3.5 billion to develop, according to the report. The satellite was funded through a process that received a lesser degree of oversight from Congress compared with similar national security-related satellites, industry officials said. They don't know which division of the Department of Defense the satellite was made for. It apparently was some sort of Earth observation or surveillance technology, but it just blew up. $3.5 billion blew up. $2 million missiles were intercepted and blown up over Syria. So this is could explain also why we can't have any inflation. The central bank keeps on trying to create inflation, and then we keep on evaporating these our basically currency. If the U.S. dollar is backed by the military and missiles blow up and $3.5 billion payloads blow up and nobody knows what happens.
I've said that many times, that the Fed prints the money and then the Pentagon blows it up in various countries around the world, or sends U.S. soldiers out there to get maimed and blown up. You don't die for your country to protect democracy. You die in America to stop inflation. That's what the soldiers out there are dying for. They should replace the American flag with an upside-down dollar sign or something. They're fighting inflation by dying. Thank you, American servicemen.
Actually, not very many servicemen die anymore because these are being launched from Florida and Las Vegas. The drones and missiles are sent from somewhere very safe, somewhere far away from the battlefield.
They get a Purple Heart, though.
So I want to turn to another possible solution, and I think this is something that you found, and hopefully we'll stick with the story because I think it's an interesting one. This is what happened in 2011 that was so unique. Is it the new surveillance technology? Well, I mean, that's part of it. We are starting to survey people more, and we've seen this with Facebook and Amazon and Google and all these internet companies. is something unique was Libya. Was that a connection to something new in warfare that was so much more profitable? Well, there's another thing that happened in 2011.
The reason why the stocks have gone up dramatically since 2011. You are about to make the reveal.
I'm not sure this is the reason. I'm just saying, because correlation doesn't necessarily equal causality, but I'm going to explore this theory as a theory, and we're proposing this right here on the Keiser report. There are a lot of details here. We'll probably have to go into the second half, but I want to talk about this, the new oil. A lot of our wars, all these defense shares are about protecting the oil fields of the Middle East, right? Everybody says that, everybody knows that, even CNN and MSNBC and Fox will say that. Well, here is something that is being called the new oil by analysts themselves, and that is federal defense contractors find a new profitable business, Obamacare. So this is from 2014.
What?
This is
what?
Yeah.
What? Obamacare?
Yeah.
And the defense contractors?
Yeah.
That's how they're making their money. Tell me more.
So this is an article from 2014, and Obamacare passed in March of 2010, but it takes a while for all these contracts to start going and happening. 2011, by the way, was also the summer of 2011, right at the bottom of those defense contractors' share price. 2011 was when automatic cuts to the Department of Defense budget came in. There were automatic cuts, so you would have thought that these share prices, therefore, should decline or not do so well, not increase by 5 to 7-fold over the next few years. Well, they use the example of General Dynamics. We didn't go over their share price, but General Dynamics is actually the oldest defense contractor in America. It's from the 1890s. They also have Electric Boat based out of Groton, Connecticut, where they make the nuclear submarines, the Trident submarines. Well, General Dynamics business was facing huge losses back in 2011, 2012. Diminishing wars and plunging defense spending has slashed the weapon makers' revenue and left some subsidiaries worth far less than it had paid for them. But the company was already pushing in a new direction, and that is healthcare, and we'll come back to that when we come back from this break.
All right. Well, this is fascinating. Don't go away. Much more coming your way. Defense contractors and healthcare? Stay right there. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. We are exploring the connection between defense contractors, their stock price, and the healthcare industry. The markets reveal all, ultimately, it's all in the prices. Markets finance scandal. Keiser Report gets into the real news because we look at the prices, and then we tell you what's really happening. That's why millions of people watch us every single day. So continue.
Max, as we were saying at the top of the show, all the financial news in America, Bloomberg, CNBC, they're all like, yeehaw, defense shares are soaring because we have another war going on in Syria, and they're celebrating that. Max and Stacy here on Keiser Report have noticed something different, that the shares are rising, of course, just as they did when we invaded Iraq, or just they did when we invaded Afghanistan, or just as they did during the Cold War, especially tense moments. But as we showed in the long-term charts going back through the first Cold War, is that the rise in the share price since 2011 is something, it looks like .com sort of action. These are 5-fold, 7-fold share price increases in these defense sector stocks. So at the end of the first half, we turned to that headline from 2014, which was that federal defense contractors find a new profitable business, Obamacare. General Dynamics is what they were pointing out. Then, because of diminishing wars and diminishing war profits, they turned to Obamacare, providing services to all those Health and Human Services Department government contracts to build Obamacare and provide services for Obamacare. Soon after Congress passed the landmark Affordable Care Act, the maker of submarines and tanks decided to expand its business related to healthcare. Its 2011 purchase of health data firm Vangent instantly made it the largest contractor to Medicare and Medicaid. Huge government plans for seniors and the poor. Quote, they saw that their legacy defense market was going to be taking a hit, said Sebastian Lagana, an analyst with Technology Business Research, a market research firm, and they knew the ACA was going to inject funds into the healthcare market. As the article then says, if healthcare is the new oil, as some investors hope, this was the market to get into.
Right, the American pogrom. This is almost 1 million people went bankrupt because the medical establishment, the defense industry, and the health insurance industry targeted them for death. And now they are dying, as predicted. Good on you, matey. Your plan to kill people is working. So essentially, a medical procedure that costs $500, the medical industry, these guys now are working for the defense contractors, and presumably they're threatening you not with lawsuits, but with actual weapons of mass destruction will come to your home if you don't pay the health cost. And they'll say a procedure that is $500 in cost, they'll say, we're going to charge you $20,000 unless you pay us Obamacare, which works out to, $2,000 or $3,000 for that procedure. And by the way, we won't actually pay for the procedure because there's a deductible. That means that we won't actually pay for anything. So this is causing wholesale bankruptcy across America. This is causing the defense contractors to become hugely wealthy. And when you give guys with very small genitalia a lot of money, they get very pigeon-chested, and they're like, "Oh, Russians are everywhere. We have to go kill them," because there's no checks and balances. You're just giving psychopaths, you're writing them huge checks. Trillions of dollars go to psychopaths in the military who then put on their big medals and they're saying, "Oh, Russians are everywhere. There's a Russian in my sphincter. There's a Russian in my teacup. There's a Russian in that. Oh, Russians are everywhere!" Right? Rachel Maddow is like gassed every day with goofy gas, and she's all puffed up and she's like, "Ooh!" Why? $3 trillion in tax revenue going into psychopaths? Think about it.
The premiums that you and I pay actually don't go to these programs. What they're after is the government stuff, the government programs, the government free money that our taxes pay.
Where's the government? Where do they get the money?
Okay.
They don't do anything there. They don't make anything. The government's not out there in Washington stamping out widgets. They just extort. That's the business.
The article says, if healthcare is the new oil, as some investors hope, HHS, which is the Department of Health and Human Services, is one of the richest fields, along with the massive opportunities in health-related computer spending by the Departments of Defense, Veterans Affairs, and Treasury. The DoD market is very weak, said Steve Kellman, a Harvard management professor and contracting specialist. The two growth markets are cybersecurity and healthcare. So everybody is trying to get into those. So like I said, when we look at 2011 and the charts go parabolic, they go in a direction very much like the dot-com sector. Was that Libya? No, I think we can prove, because they're saying, the analysts looking at it at the time, this is in 2014, they're saying the Department of Defense contracts are very weak. Where is all the new money going? Well, the Department of Health and Human Services, and how to plunder those, and this has done very well for them. And in fact, for traditional defense contractors, healthcare isn't the new oil. It is the new F-35 fighter or Zumwalt-class destroyer. Of course, the F-35, which Lockheed Martin built, is the largest defense contract in global world history. It's the $1.5 trillion, at least we don't know how much it actually costs, but that the fighter jet that cost went way over budget. So because of the fact that just like the Department of Health and Human Services, just like with the F-35, pay cost plus. So whatever your costs are, they pay it. It doesn't matter. So they'll just pay it. So Lockheed Martin, which created the F-35, the huge boondoggle there, well, they've gotten into Obamacare provision. This is a pretty exciting time to be in the federal health IT space, said Horace Blackman, Lockheed Martin's Vice President of Health and Life Sciences. The biggest opportunities I would point to are the efforts associated with the Affordable Care Act. So here we have Lockheed Martin saying the biggest opportunities are providing a fair, Affordable Care Act. Lockheed Martin also provided some of the new missiles going into Syria. So how is Syria sold to you? How is an Affordable Care Act sold to you? What was the argument by Rachel Maddow for both?
Tell us.
Humanitarian intervention. You care about those people in Syria, right? You might not care about the children, the women and children in Yemen, but you care about the women and children in Syria, right? Well, we need Lockheed Martin. Here, apparently, you care about those poor people who don't have health care. Well, if you give Lockheed Martin some money, apparently they'll help us out.
Yeah, humanitarian aid. That's how they sold it. So the healthcare industry, to ransack and pillage the American economy, is doing so for humanitarian reasons, which they learned from There are war lobbying efforts in Washington. They could get, or we just saw Theresa May in the UK justify illegal bomb dropping in Syria, obvious war crimes for humanitarian reasons. That's the script given to her by Lockheed Martin and the British Aerospace. There's a script. Go out there, lie through your teeth for humanitarian reasons, because it works. Because people, it's wag the dog. Remember, they show the little girl running across the bridge, and Americans get out their checkbooks. Here's a $3 trillion of British people. Oh no, it's a little dog. And then, of course, in this Syrian war, they had the little girl with the big eyes. Oh my God, we have to bomb, bomb, bomb. And they learned that script from the defense contractors, who are the terrorists within.
Well, they do mention that they learned it from the defense contractor lobbyists. This is a policy from them. But in terms of Lockheed Martin, the biggest defense contractor in the world, while Lockheed has run HHS computers for a long time, its business with the agency has increased by more than half since 2006 to $300 million annually, according to federal records. However, it's not just cybersecurity skills. Washington employees especially prize health analytics skills. So we have 200 epidemiologists, we have clinical statisticians, we have physicians, we have nurses, said Amy Caro, head of the health division of Northrop Grumman, better known for its B-2 stealth bomber. So there's Northrop Grumman in there. So remember, we showed their stock chart up sevenfold since 2011. And they are big time into their getting, the cybersecurity, of course, any sort of internet computer system programs. Those are way easier to defraud governments of.
Well, they're vertically integrated.
Yeah.
It's like a fast food industry sells you the fast food that gives you the diarrhea, and then they sell anti-diarrhea medicine to cure the diarrhea. So here you have the defense contractors who supply all the weapons to go kill people, and then they also sell the insurance products to help people get over from their being maimed by the very same corporation. So the shareholders are getting both ends of the stick. And of course, meanwhile, the ongoing crisis in America from legalized heroin, from this same industry, the opioid crisis.
Opioid, yeah.
Opioid crisis claims another. Former guest of this show, Matthew Mellon, a guy who told me to buy Ripple at 3 pennies a coin, and I thought he was insane. He put $2 million into Ripple and made $1 billion. He's part of the Mellon Drexel, banking, dynasty. He was a genius, but now he's dead. In large part because of the frickin' opioid, pushers in this country who again, there's no discrimination, is there? They don't care who you are. This trifecta of murder, the defense contractors, the opium manufacturers, and the health industry is kind of like the Bermuda Triangle of the American pogrom. If you step a foot into that tar pit, the chances are you're going to die. And they don't care. And neither does Maddow.
Going back to the story, we're going to look at another angle to it and another big name that we don't have their share price, but you'll recognize the name. And that is the quickest way to acquire a particular expertise needed by HHS, some contractors have found, is often to mimic General Dynamics and by somebody already doing the work. In October of 2014, defense and intelligence giant Booz Allen Hamilton said it bought the health division of Genova Technologies, a tech company that has done $90 million in HHS business since the health law was passed, according to federal records. So Booz Allen, of course, was where Edward Snowden was working in Hawaii when he was actually working for the NSA. It's a huge corporation. As they say, that the deal is part of a larger push by Booz, majority owned by the Carlyle Group, a private equity firm to sell technology services and consulting to HHS. So Carlyle Group, of course, is comprised of, it's this private equity group, is I think the largest in the world, and it's headed by all these former presidents. It's kind of a way to do the kickbacks and make them oligarchs, but pretend it's private sector. But all their contracts are with the government, and Booz Allen's, all their contracts are with the government. All these defense contractors, all with the government. Their share prices are, by the way, on multiples looking very much like .com companies, like 26 times PE. So it's here, Booz Allen is in the business as well, and we're not allowed to know because they're private sector as well, but because they do so much secret work with the government, nobody knows how much money they're actually getting from this work.
Well, mass death has never been more profitable, right? I mean, they're in the business of extermination, right? They get paid a lot of money to exterminate Americans. These are American corporations. The scourge within the country is not being addressed. The heroes, like a Warren Buffett or other investors, are lauded as archetypes for all children to aspire to be. And yet they are investing in wholesale slaughter. So to deflect attention, of course, there's an existential threat coming from another place, another country. And the farce goes on, the pantomime continues. And as Shakespeare said, America is doomed. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Stacey Herbert. If you want to catch us on Twitter, it's Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.